Hey y'all! So today I'm going to be starting a new series on my channel, and that series is focused around the book Literary Listography. So for those of you who don't know, this is actually one of the books in the Listography series, which is basically a series where each of the books focuses around a topic like books or movies, and each book has like blank lists inside of it that talk about different things. Like this one is books that taught me something, and you just go through it and fill out the different lists. I've actually had this since it came out. I even pre-ordered it, so I've had it for almost a year now, and for some reason it wasn't until like last week that I thought, maybe this would make a cool series on my channel. But yeah, I've gone through and starred certain lists as ones that I want to make a video on, and I will just be sporadically making new listography videos. As you can see, this is the full list of all of the blank lists in this book, and I have a ton of them starred, so this could go on for quite a while. However, I decided to start with something pretty basic because for a lot of these books, the lists will change as I read new books, but for some of them, like the one that I'm going to be doing today, this one is never going to change, because this one is books that I read in elementary school and junior high. So as you can see, I have a lot of books written down here, and so I'm just going to be kind of going through them and talking about them, starting with the books that I read earlier in elementary school and then going through the end of junior high. And just as a point of reference, for me, elementary school was kindergarten through 6th grade, and junior high was actually just 7th and 8th grade. Because where I lived at the beginning of junior high had elementary school through 6th grade, and where I moved to after 8th grade had high school starting in 9th grade. So I only had 2 years of junior high. So the first book series that I have written down here is the A to Z Mysteries series, which I read a lot through the first few years of elementary school. This is just as it sounds. Each book has an alliteration from A to Z, so there are 26 of them. And I loved these books. At the time I was reading them, I think that there were still like 5 or 6 that hadn't come out yet, so I actually haven't read all 26 books, but I've read all the ones that were out at the time that I was reading them. And you will start to notice a theme because I read a lot of long series when I was a kid, and that's kind of transferred into my adult life as well. Another one that I think a lot of people will have read is the Magic Treehouse series. I know a lot of people who read them when they were younger, and these were definitely ones that I read a lot. I want to say that there were like 25 out when I was reading these, and I don't think I read all of them, but the two that I really liked were book 8, which was on the moon, and book 10, which was set in like a western town. So yeah, I didn't love those quite as much as I loved the A to Z Mysteries, but they were still one of my faves. Oh, this is one that is major high up on the list, and that is the Junie B. Jones books. I loved those. In fact, on my 16th birthday, my mom whipped out, I think, book 5, the I Keep Lucky Fruitcake, I think it's book 5, and she read this part where Junie B. Jones throws a sponge into the toilet, and it's the most hilarious scene, and we both die laughing still to this day whenever we read it. It's just too good, and so many great memories are wrapped up in that series. Once again, I think there were 15 to 20 books out when I read these, and I think I stopped when she moved on to 1st grade. I think I maybe read like one book about her in 1st grade. But yeah, Junie B. Jones was a definite highlight of my childhood. Another one that I didn't read a lot, but I did read a little bit of when I was younger, is the Marvin Redpost series. I don't remember many of them, but I do distinctly remember that there was a book where Marvin thought that he had turned into a girl, which I thought was really progressive for a children's book, but nonetheless, I distinctly remember that one, but I don't remember any of the other books. Another big one when I was little was The New Adventures of Mary-Kate and Ashley, which was a very long mystery series about Mary-Kate and Ashley. If you haven't noticed, my love of mystery books has been around for a very long time. But yeah, I think I read all of the ones that were out of this series when I was younger. I don't remember how many there were, but I've read so many of these books, and I loved them. The only ones that I really distinctly remember from the series are one about basketball where I think their jerseys went missing, and then one where they were horseback riding because I loved horses. Oh, and speaking of horses, the next series on the list is the Pony Pals series, which I'm pretty sure I also read every single book of. This was kind of like the Saddle Club, but I don't remember liking the Saddle Club. I don't think I read more than one book of that, but I loved the Pony Pals. Yeah, I just absolutely loved the series, and I think there were like 30 to 35 books out of this one. There were a lot. and I read, I think, all of them. The next one on the list is the last of the long series, at least for a little while, and that is the Berenstain Bears Big Chapter Book series. This was like not the little kids books, but they were like actual like chapter books for people maybe like 4th grade-ish, and I really loved these. These were some of the books that I would read over and over and over again, maybe not like in a row, but I definitely read the majority of these books more than once. And I'm not sure if I read all of the books in the series, but I definitely read all the ones that my library had. I distinctly remember one where they were trying to fight the dress code at their school, and then another one where like there was like a haunted horse. Again, horse books. The next one on the list is one that I actually still have and have read fairly recently, and that is House on Hackman's Hill. I don't think this is a super well-known book, but this is one that I have read many, many times. And honestly, this book is super creepy even for like a non-children's book. Like, I really like this book, but it's super creepy. Basically, these kids get told this story about a mummy in this old deserted mansion, and they kind of go looking for it, and it's just, yeah, super creepy. The next one on the list is The Wizard of Oz, and I remember this being the first book where I realized that movie adaptations were not exactly like the same thing as the book, because I was really confused when I was reading the book, and I was like, why is this not just like the movie? So yeah, I kind of want to go back and reread this because I remember there being some really weird things that were left out of the movie, and I really liked them, but I don't remember what it was. So yeah, I definitely want to go back and reread this because I really liked it when I was younger. Next are like the children's illustrated classics. Specifically, I remember reading Beauty and the Beast and Peter Pan, again with the horse books. I loved horses. But yeah, I read the illustrated classics version of Black Beauty more times than I can count, and I still haven't read the actual novel. But yeah, I remember reading that and Peter Pan specifically, and I can't remember if I read any of the other ones. So at this point, we're kind of reaching a slight break in the books because it's still elementary school, but the books that I just mentioned are like 4th grade and earlier, and the ones that I'm about to go into are like 5th grade and later. And the first one of those books is actually one that I still really love to this day and have talked about a few times on my channel, and that is All American Girl by Meg Cabot. Yeah, I read this one either in 4th or 5th grade, I can't really remember, but I really loved it, and I still really love it to this day. The next thing on my list is actually not a specific book or series, but just an author in general, and that is Peg Carrot. I really got into her books in 5th grade. And the strange thing is, even though most of the books I read from her were like her fiction books, the only one that I distinctly remember like what happens in it is her book called, I think, Small Steps, which is about her experience with polio. So yeah, that's the only one that I actually remember what happened in it, but I do have a ton of her books like on my Goodreads noting that I've read them, but I don't remember what happened in a lot of them. However, I did really love her books, and I read pretty much all the ones that my school library had from her. The next one on the list is one that my entire 5th grade class got really into, and that was the Shadow Children books. I think it ended up being either a 7 or 8 book series, but I only ever read the first, I think, 4 or 5 of them. But yeah, my entire 5th grade class was really into them, and I really liked them too. I think the only reason I didn't continue was that I read all the books that were out, and then I just didn't keep up with them once the new ones came out. Next on the list is a big one, and that is Series of Unfortunate Events. I don't remember exactly when I started it, but I know that I was reading it at some point in elementary school, and I finished it pretty soon after the last book came out. And yeah, obviously I really liked those because, I mean, who didn't like the Series of Unfortunate Events when they were growing up? The next one on the list is actually another long series that I really enjoyed, and I actually want to go back and catch up on because I read all the books that were out, but I never kept up with the new books that came out, and that is the Charlie Bone series. I remember really loving the series when I was like in 5th and 6th grade, and I remember a new book came out and I read it, but after that one I didn't keep up with the books after it, and I really regret that because it's actually, from what I remember, a really cool series. It's pretty dark for a kid's series too, and it's kind of creepy, but I really liked it, and I actually, as a 21-year-old, well, 21 in a few days, as a 21-year-old, want to go back and read a book series about a 10-year-old. And another book series is the Redwall series. I think I read 3 or 4 books from the series, and I overall liked them, but they definitely weren't my favorite thing I ever read. But yeah, several kids that I was in class with read them and really liked them, and I didn't get quite as into them as other people did, but they were pretty enjoyable. But yeah, the ones that I remember reading are Redwall, Martin the Warrior, I think I read Lord Brocktree. I remember it's a series where you don't necessarily have to read them in the order that they were published, but that there's also another chronological order, like within the world. Yeah, I don't know. It was really confusing. Never finished the series. Never will, probably. And of course, 5th grade was also when I first started reading the Harry Potter series, and obviously I continued reading those into junior high when the last book was released. And I feel like I don't need to say much about the series because I already gush about it a lot. And then the last one from elementary school that I have on my list is called Banner in the Sky. I don't remember who it's by, but I guess you'll see on the cover. This one is one that my 6th grade teacher actually read to us, and she would always read to us every day after we had recess, but this is the only one that actually really stuck with me. I mean, in general, I liked the books that she read to us, and I looked forward to it every day. However, a lot of them were really old, and I'm pretty sure this one's a fairly old book as well. But for some reason, this one really stuck with me and I really liked it, and I actually have a copy of it at home. Okay, so now moving on to the books that I read in junior high, which is going to be significantly shorter since it was only 2 years of my life. So the first one, and most obvious one if you know anything about my channel, is the Pendragon series. I actually started it in 7th grade, and I obviously finished it once the last book came out when I was in high school. I can't remember if it was freshman year or if it was sophomore year, but yeah. I read it basically 7th grade through when the series was finished. And obviously it still holds a very special place in my heart, and it's one of my favorite series of all time, still to this day. I also got really into Scott Westerfeld in junior high. I think at the time he only had out his Uglies trilogy and his Midnighters trilogy, and I read and really enjoyed the entirety of the Midnighters trilogy, and I also read the first 2 books in the Uglies trilogy. I don't think I ever finished it. But yeah, I really liked Scott Westerfeld in junior high. I also really got into a series that Suzanne Collins wrote sometime before the Hunger Games trilogy, and that was like the Gregor the Overlander series. I'm not sure if that was the official title of the series, but that was the title of the first book. And I can't remember how many books I read from that series, but I did really enjoy it, and it was really interesting. And it's one of the series that I kind of want to go back and read because it was really intriguing and I never finished it. So there's this book award in Oklahoma, which is where I went to junior high school, that's called the Sequoia Award, and my junior high required us to read, I think, at least 3 books that were nominated for it that year. I think. Don't quote me on that. It may have been 1, it may have been 3, I don't remember. But one of the books that I read for that in, I think, 7th grade was called Sleeping Freshmen Never Lie. I really enjoyed it, I think, but I don't remember that much about it. Another book that I read in junior high, which I think was nominated for the Sequoia, which is why I read it, was robandsarah.com. I actually really enjoyed this one, and I have a copy at home, I think. I looked for it for quite a while, and I think I finally found one. And then finishing off the list is a series that is very well known and very well loved, and that is the Percy Jackson series. I have not read the entire series, because when I read it in junior high, only the first 3 books were out, and I didn't keep up with it afterward, but I did read the first 3 books in junior high, and I really enjoyed it, and I definitely plan on finishing it. And then of course continuing on to the Heroes of Olympus series as well. So yeah, those are the books that I actually remember reading from elementary school and junior high. I know I definitely read a lot more books in elementary school, but those are the only ones that really stuck with me or that I even remember reading at this point. I think that the next literary listography video that I'm going to do is going to be the books I read in high school, but for that one it's going to be focused on the required reading that I had in high school rather than the actual fun reading I did in high school, because for me high school was a lot of rereading and I only read a handful of new books, most of which are already pretty prominently shown on my channel, so there'd be almost no point in telling you about them. So yeah, let me know down in the comments what books y'all read when you were younger, and if we read any of the same books. I mean, obviously Harry Potter, but any of the other books as well. As always, I will leave links down in the description to my blog, Twitter, and Goodreads. Please add me as a friend on Goodreads. I would love to be friends with all of you. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. Thank you so much for watching. Bye! I mean, obviously, Harry Potter, no.